Hey everyone, if you're watching this, it's because you just pre-ordered my new book, 8 Rules of Love. So in this video, this exclusive video that's just for you, I'm going to guide you through the 8 cliches of love to avoid letting cliches define us or follow them correctly. So again, I want to give you a big thank you for pre-ordering my book. It's a huge help to authors. And I'd love for you to recommend the book to your friends and family so that they can enjoy this exclusive video when they pre-order as well. Let's dive in. My team and I researched what we believed were the most common cliches that we hear about love. Maybe you heard some of these from your parents, maybe from your uncles and aunts, maybe a friend who's madly in love, or someone who just broke up and couldn't be more sad. Right? These are things that have been lasting for generations, and now they're almost accepted as truths. They're repeated as truths. And I want to debunk those myths. I want to figure out what parts are real and which parts are valid and which parts aren't. And the first one that we chose to start with is you find love when you least expect it. Now, I'm guessing you've heard that one before. Maybe you're someone who's been busy looking for love. Maybe you have a plan, maybe you have a list, maybe you have all of the things carved out, and someone looks at you and says, you'll find love when you least expect it. You're putting in way too much effort right now. Or you heard about someone who just found their person and they're about to get married and they're so excited, and you go to them and you say, how did you find them? Like, what happened? Like, what's your story? And they say, well, I wasn't even looking for love. I was just like busy with my career and I was busy at home and I was busy with my family. And then somehow I just bumped into this amazing person. Now, when you hear stories like that, it's natural to think, wow, maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe I'm overprepared. Maybe I'm setting myself up for failure because I've been putting myself out there again and again and again, and I'm not finding love. So let me share with you my personal insights on this first cliche, you'll find love when you least expect it. Now, I actually do believe that you will have incredible things happen in your life when you least expect them. That's true. That's happened to me in my career. It's happened to me in relationships. But that doesn't mean you're not working on them. See, there's a difference between expecting something to happen and working to make something happen. So when the cliche says you find love when you least expect it, there may be truth to the expectation part. But if you think you'll find love when you're not working towards it, when you're not creating for it, when you're not building for it, that's very unlikely. And I think often when we hear this cliche, we think it means, oh, I'll find love when I don't care about it. I'll find the right person when I'm not thinking about it. And that's not true, because I think that intention creates attention, what we focus on, which then creates action, which leads us to where we want to be. And so even if all you have is an intention that I want to find the right person, you're now looking through a different lens. The difference is you're not expecting it to happen now. Expectation is when we live in a world that's bound by timelines. It's bound by deadlines. It's bound by wanting something to happen in a certain way, in a certain place, at a certain time. I do think it's important to set more realistic expectations, and you are never going to find love when you expect it, but you're not going to find love either if you don't work towards it. Now let's look at the research. According to a study from Stanford, more people are likely to meet a romantic partner online versus being introduced by others or chance encounters through their social circle. This means by definition that they were trying to meet someone. Exactly the point I was making earlier, that if you're not trying to meet people, if you're not trying to connect with people, it's very random to expect that it's going to naturally happen. So ask yourself this. Ask yourself how this thinking measures up to how you would approach other important things in your life. Would you hope to find an apartment when you least expect it? Or would you proactively and thoughtfully search for one because it's a priority? What about a new job, even a new pet? Would you hope a stray cat or dog would just show up on your doorstep? Sure, it could happen, but wouldn't you be more likely to identify the type of pet that would be a good fit then go to the shelter to seek out a match. There's a popular quote from coach Vince Lombardi that applies here. He said, "Hope is not a strategy." Right? Vince Lombardi said, hope is not a strategy. And I think a lot of us live in the hope, the belief, the idea, the wish. And I think when we spend a lot of time in wishing, waiting, and wanting, instead of building, creating, that's when we lose out. I think there's a lot of language shift here too. I think we often think about finding love, looking for love, seeking love. And I'm going to give you a bit of a sneak peek with the book right now, but in the book I talk a lot about how we're trying to change that mindset from finding to building, from seeking to creating, instead of just looking for love, learning to love. And I think that's where this cliche falls short. You're not going to find love if you're not working towards it. You're not going to find love if you're not trying to build it. But you're also not going to find love if you're just sitting there expecting it. Cliche number 2, distance or absence makes the heart grow fonder. I'm fascinated by where this originated from because I think this is one of the most popular, most common sayings that we've heard over time. And this is often used sometimes when someone's traveling for a bit or maybe someone's moving for work and you hear someone in your life that cares about you and they say, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Like this is going to bring you closer together than ever before, right? You have a supportive friend and they look you in the eyes and they just say, you're going to fall more in love because of this. And that person means well. They care about you. They love you. And what I find about this one is that it's actually really intriguing, the kind of conversation this creates. So Radhi and I, we realized when we were dating, we probably saw each other once or twice a week, right? And then as we got more serious in dating, maybe we saw each other every day. And then of course, when we were married, we were spending tons of time together. And what we realized was we also spent a lot of our time in our relationship, even after being married, apart. So Radhi would visit London very often. I would stay back in New York at the time. Or even when we moved to LA, Radhi would be back in London. I'd be in LA. I'd then be traveling for work, much shorter trips, but still be away. And what we found for us was that we created this renewed enthusiasm to see each other again. We missed each other and couldn't wait to be back together again. So for us, absence or distance truly did make the heart grow fonder. And while that was beautiful and wonderful, I realized that that was only true because the time we spent together, we also made an effort to make beautiful memories together. It wasn't that when we were together, we were just neglectful and then we were apart and we were neglectful again. It was that when we were together, we really made the most of that time. We really made it an event. We had a date night. We would take a weekend break. We would do things that created long-lasting memories and stability, which meant when we were apart, we were able to feel a sense of missing each other, to feel a sense of wanting to be back with the other person. Now, I do think it's important to note that this becomes easier when two people are pursuing their purpose. When you are loving what you do, doing what you love, when you're beautifully engaged in that purpose, in that service, you're already getting so much from that experience. And in the book, 8 Rules of Love, I will actually show you how you do that in a relationship and how you can help your partner and how they can help you also find your purpose. So with me and Radhi, I found that I was fairly established in my purpose at the time. Radhi was just beginning to discover hers. And that gave us something to fixate on and focus on, so that then when we came back together, we were super excited and it enhanced our relationship. I find that distance becomes harder for a couple of reasons. If you're distant and you don't yet have a stable foundation, that's tough. For example, you meet someone on vacation, you fall madly in love, you have a holiday romance, and then all of a sudden you're split up again after 2 weeks, maybe you were together for a month if you were lucky, and now you're in a long distance relationship. That's much harder. You haven't had enough time to build a stable platform in which to appreciate distance. You can't always have been disconnected and distant and then have more distance and absence because you haven't had the time and energy to build a stable platform to build on. right? And I think that's where a lot of people end up. Or you've had a lot of time together, but you've been obsessed with each other that entire time, and now distance comes along and it pushes you over the edge. You're so dependent, codependent on seeing that person every day, messaging them every second, having an instant response, seeing them every night, that now when you're faced with the challenge of distance or absence, it starts to make everything very difficult. I found this even with friendship. When I moved to New York, I had a 5-hour time difference with my family in London. When I moved to LA, I had an 8-hour time difference. And I found that even friends that I knew exceptionally well, the ones that I got closer to were the ones that I had a steady relationship and were happy to invest. Or I also saw what I was just talking about, where if there were friends that I saw all the time, but we didn't have the ability to have a relationship in a way that was potentially healthier and allowed for space, it was harder to sustain it. So even if you're in the same city, even if you're in the same town, it's really healthy to have individual groups of friends, to have individual interests, to have hobbies that you do separate of each other, because that allows you to have this space where you go away, you have unique experiences, you have unique stories, you have unique things that you took part in, and now you get to share them with each other. I think the challenge is a lot of relationships today are trying to share the same experiences rather than have different experiences and then share the enthusiasm that comes with those. Okay, let's take a look at the research. According to research, only 10% of marriages in the US started as long-distance relationships. This goes back to the point that I was making earlier, that if it starts as a long-distance relationship, it requires so much more to make it work because you haven't built that stable foundation. Studies also show that more than half of people, 55% in long-distance relationships, worry their partner will meet someone else. This is probably the biggest cause of disconnect in a relationship. You're messaging your partner, they live in another country or maybe even in another city, they're working there, and they don't respond. It's the time difference. Maybe they're working when you wake up. Now, when they're waking up, you're working. And then you see a picture that they post on Instagram or a video that they post on TikTok, and you see that they had a great night. All of a sudden, you've experienced FOMO, you have the fear of missing out, you feel they must have met someone else, you feel they're having a good time without you. And this insecurity breeds so many challenges in a relationship. If you truly want to have a successful relationship with someone, you have to feel joy when they feel joy. If they're having a positive experience, a truly loving relationship would mean that you feel happy for them. And often I've worked with clients where they've said to me, when my partner calls me, I have to play down my life because they'll feel sad if I'm having a good time and they're not here. This is not ideal for a relationship, but it's very normal. A lot of people, whether we experience challenges as children, whether we felt abandoned, whether we felt lonely, whether it was something we experienced with our parents, we're craving that completion through our partners. Not realizing that craving that completion, craving that constant connection is what pushes someone away. People get scared by that. People get worried by that this person doesn't actually want me to have a great time. Now, what do we do that? How do you work with that? In 8 Rules of Love, I actually walk you through how you overcome your insecurity so that you can actually avoid making mistakes in a relationship, which I think is something we've all experienced. According to relationship experts, absence may truly make the heart grow fonder. It prolongs novelty, which humans crave. According to New York City-based relationship expert and best-selling author Susan Winter, humans are designed to continually be seeking, striving, and in the process of acquisition. And the way that translates into your romantic life is through a heightened sense of longing and appreciation when your partner is absent. But the longing itself isn't enough to sustain a relationship. Without regular connection and meaningful communication, that actually cause partners to drift apart, right? So distance, when we look at the cliche, distance can make the heart grow fonder, but it isn't enough to create a foundation. Fondness and a stable foundation are two separate things. Now, I also want to share some examples of when distance makes the heart grow fonder isn't always true, or it isn't always beneficial. Sometimes when we're apart from our partner, science shows that we can idealize them, right? So there's one side of going, oh, they're making a mistake, or they're going to find someone else, the negative, or the positive. Oh, they're always so wonderful, and I remember all the good things, right? We fixate on the positive aspects of them that we miss and overlook the negative or challenging aspects of the relationship. 37% of long-distance couples break up within 3 months of living close together, right? You're so excited to finally be together, you get into the same place, you move in together, and all of a sudden, you realize all the challenges that come with that. I think it's important to remember that any type of relationship can truly work. Of course, there are success stories, but we have to realize that whether we're close or whether we're far, we have to build up a healthy sense of independence and then a strong sense of enhancing each other's life rather than draining from each other. Cliche number 3. There's 2 versions of this one. Love always wins, or love is all you need. Now, I love love. I mean, I just wrote a whole book about love. So I do believe that love is phenomenal and love is incredible. And love is this amazing force that we experience and that we want to experience. But I think it's too simplistic to say love is all you need. Now, I really don't want to upset you with that statement, and I hope it doesn't offend anyone, but I'll explain why. I used to think that love is all you need. I used to believe that love always wins. But I know plenty of people who'd say they're in love, but they're not together. I know plenty of people who would have said they loved someone, but treated them badly. I know plenty of people who would say that all they had for each other was love. But then whenever they were together, they would just argue all the time. The challenge is that the love we share today, the love we experience today, isn't deeply rooted in safety, in security, in kindness, in action, right? A lot of people say they love someone or believe they love someone, but then they don't want to develop the skills that help them navigate conflict. If you love someone, it means you'd be willing to learn new skills, and therefore love is all you need in one sense, but it isn't because of how limitedly we see the word. For me, we have to recognize that there are other skills and values that have to be brought into a relationship. For example, I know from my own life where I may have said I love someone, but I didn't make them feel safe. And to them at that point in their life, what they needed was a feeling of safety. They didn't need love and affection and admiration and words of affirmation. What they needed was feeling safe. And I wasn't smart enough and wise enough to know that that is what they were asking for when they were asking for love. I think we limit love to feeling like a few emotions, a few feelings, a few words, and not recognizing that safety is also love. Care is also love. Respect is also love. And so we may be trying to give a certain type of love, but there's so much more to it. And so if you're in a relationship and you're in love, I'm so happy for you. And if you're truly in love, please focus on developing the skills, the tools, the habits that you need to keep that love alive, right? It's like saying that you want to grow this beautiful plant in your garden and you're like, I'm just going to love this plant. But that plant needs water and it needs the soil to be fertile. It needs the sun, right? You can say that you love your child, but your child is going to need a lot more infrastructure, positive environment, resources. That is all inspired by love, but it's more than love. And so I think we could say that love inspires everything, or love is the root of everything, or love is the key ingredient, but it's not all you need. And I think that's something important to reflect on. Let's take a look at the research. According to philosophy professor Aaron Ben-Zeev, love is not all you need. He writes in Psychology Today, romantic love is not all we need in life. We need much more. In particular, we need to maintain our personal flourishing, which also includes self-fulfillment. Now, this goes into a completely different direction, right? The research is showing that if love is all you need in your entire life, then you'd be fully satisfied. But we realize that the personal journey never stops. According to Cornell University professor Anthony Burrow, having a strong sense of purpose in life, not love, improves our psychological immune system and helps to protect our sense of self-esteem. How many times have you had a breakup and you feel broken? How many times does someone break up with you and your self-esteem just drops? How many times does someone reject you on a dating app and you feel unworthy? All of that happens because there is so much need for self-respect, for self-esteem, for self-love in order to truly learn to love. Belonging and love is only the number 3 entry on Maslow's famous hierarchy of needs. It's considered a basic level need, but there are 7 others. Physiological needs, food, water, etc. 2, safety. 3, love. 4, esteem. 5, cognitive, meaning, curiosity, comprehension. 6, aesthetic beauty. And 7, self-actualization. And number 8, self-transcendence or a spiritual connection. Research out of the University of Denver shows that romantic love is not the biggest predictor of whether couples will stay together. It's how good they are at managing conflict and negative emotions. Extensive scholarly research conducted by Professor Markman and his colleagues at the University of Denver on couples just starting out shows that no matter how we measure love, love does not predict the future of the relationship. This empirically means that love is not enough. Okay, number 4, this is one of my favorite ones. It was love at first sight. Now, the first thing I think of when I remember this phrase is this really cheesy, embarrassing pickup line that I remember guys would use all the time. I never used it, of course. I mean, I'm beyond these pickup lines. But the pickup line was, do you believe in love at first sight or should I walk past again? Oh my gosh, it is terrible. But I remember it being in TV shows and movies, and then this idea of like, oh, it was love at first sight. Like I felt that attraction, like we just knew, right? And I think there's a lot of us that are seeking that spark. We're seeking that connection. We're hoping that you're gonna meet someone at the grocery store, or when you walk out the movies, or when you're walking down the street, or you're at that friend's party and you're just gonna see someone and you're both gonna instantly know that you're made for each other. Movies have showed us that, music talks about it, right? We've seen it all around us. And I definitely was one of those kids who loved love and the way it was shown in the movies, and always hoped that that would be the case, and even almost maybe felt like sometimes that was the case. So I've definitely been there. But now when I think about it, I don't think that you can truly have love at first sight. Of course, attraction, of course, infatuation, of course, a feeling of connection or curiosity. But love is a big thing to say you feel about someone at first sight. The reason I'm saying that, from my perspective, is that to me, love means to constantly understand someone more deeply. So could you love someone's appearance at first sight? Sure, that's possible. Could you love someone's voice when you first speak to them? Of course you could. Could you love someone's way they carry themselves, their swag, right? Could you love that in the moment you met them? Sure. Do you love that person? No, it's kind of like loving their car or loving their house. Like I could meet someone once and see their car and be like, oh, I love their car. I could meet someone once and see their home and say, oh, I love their home. But do I really love them as an entire individual? I think for those of us that have taken steps towards love, love is really being able to love someone through pain. Love is really being able to love someone and all the things you don't like about them, or the things that make you feel initially uncomfortable about them. Love is even knowing more about the person. So the idea that it was love at first sight, or we fell in love at first sight, to me is quite misleading. And I think it's naturally existing as a cliche because we do feel sparks, we do feel chemistry, we do feel connection, and that is real, but it's temporary. And we can transform that into love. That can evolve into love. That can be the beginning of love, but it isn't love in and of itself. Let's check out the research. Licensed marriage therapist Henry says, I think people can feel intense attraction and connection that they can mistake as love. We all like to believe that love is only magic, but a lot of it is actually choice. As psychologist and sex therapist Lauren Mercier explains, romantic love requires actually knowing someone and their full self, something that's impossible to do just by looking at a person. I think we all kind of overestimate our ability to judge whether we think someone's right for us or not. Like, I think you can meet someone for the first time and just be like, oh my gosh, you were made for each other, they're perfect, they're amazing, and then you realize later on they're not. Or we've all had a friend who says, I'm great at reading people. I'm really good at reading people. I used to think I was good at reading people, and I realized that I was spending so much time reading that I wasn't really listening, that I was spending so much time reading that I wasn't really reflecting after meeting that person. And I became better at reading people when I allowed myself to openly experience without any expectations, without any misconceptions, and then make my mind up as I reflected. From the same article as I quoted earlier, nearly 34% of people claim they've experienced love at first sight, according to the 2017 Singles in American survey of 5,500 singles conducted by the dating site Match. Broken down by gender, 41% of men and 29% of women said they've experienced it. Now, men are more likely to experience it because they're more visual than women, and I've also seen research that shows that men tell more people that they love them than women do. Men often say, I love you quicker than women as well. Now, moving on. According to anthropologist and science of love expert Helen Fisher, people do tend to decide within the first 3 minutes of meeting someone whether they want them in their lives in a long-term way. There are several processes in this. You can essentially subconsciously scan the other person for indicators of your biological compatibility, and also check them against a personal index of what you consider to be compatible with you. This includes info about exes and other relationships. Picture the wheels on a slot machine spinning. When you get a match in multiple areas, your brain releases a storm of chemicals in the brain networks of love and attraction. But that's not the same as actually loving someone. It's more like feeling strongly compelled to connect with them. She calls it the romantic drive response. So yes, you can experience a kind of love at first sight, but chemically, it's a kind of multi-level attraction, not the deep relational love we long for and can only experience when we purposefully build it with someone. This concept of love at first sight comes from ancient Greece, where it was thought that the arrows or darts of Eros or Cupid could make people fall in love. I love the idea, but it's not true. Cliche number 5, love is blind. Now, this is one of the few cliches that I actually agree with, but it's not a good thing, right? So my take on this, and the reason why we've heard this, is we all know a friend who kept going back to someone who didn't treat them right, or someone who treated them less than they deserve. We hear love is blind because every one of your friends can see what's wrong with this person, but you're like completely enamored by them and attracted to them and don't see any of it. And so when I think about love is blind, I think we experience it because we see so many people being so fixated or fascinated by one aspect of someone. It could be their appearance, it could be their financial situation, it could be their achievements, it could be one aspect of their kindness, and we amplify that quality and believe that it overshadows all of the other traits that may worry us about that person. And this also happens in the process of hiring. It's called the halo effect. The idea that when someone walks into a room, if they're a great communicator, or if they're well-dressed, or if you are attracted to their appearance, you automatically think they're better at their job. That's a real thing. Like, recruiters have struggled with this for years to really truly have an unbiased view of the person they're interviewing and actually see whether their skills match what they're actually looking for, as opposed to the appearance of their skills. And so how do we stay aware of this is something I talk about in the book, 8 Rules of Love. Like, how do you not let yourself get carried away by the blindness we experience through love? Because we all experience it, right? You meet someone, you're totally infatuated with them. Now everything that comes out of their mouth is amazing. And we've all had a friend who they meet someone and they'll find every excuse to make you like them. They'll be like, oh, but they also do this and they do this. And you'll be like, yeah, but I know that they didn't treat this person well, or they cheated on this person. And they'll be like, no, but they're also, they're like this. And so when we try and convince ourselves about someone, we can know that we're experiencing a bit of that blindness. Now, the first mention of this phrase comes from poet Geoffrey Chaucer in the 1400s, but it was popularized by Shakespeare. In fact, he liked it so much, it actually appeared in several of his plays, including Two Gentlemen of Verona, Henry V, and The Merchant of Venice. Let's take a look at the research. Relationship expert John Gottman calls oxytocin, also known as the bonding chemical, the hormone of bad judgment. Spikes in oxytocin, which commonly come after childbirth, during nursing, and after sex, can actually cause us to forget negative events. That helps us overlook how hard it is to care for an infant, but can also color our perception when it comes to our partner and make us overlook red flags in a relationship. This is why make-up sex or break-up sex or using sex as the only form of joy in a relationship can be extremely limiting. The reality show Love is Blind is based on the premise that what truly attracts us to someone and matters in a relationship is our emotional connection. But that's questionable. Psychologists, researchers, and sociologists and couples counselors actually tend to agree that physical attraction and physical touch are important ingredients in the tricky to mix cocktail of long-term affection. Is love blind? Is in fact a question science has addressed many times. In general, sex and desire can't be taken out of the equation of relationship satisfaction and success. Emotional and sexual aspects of intimacy in romantic relationships are important and correlate with the couple's relationship satisfaction. In a study of 335 married couples, researchers found that sexual satisfaction significantly predicted emotional intimacy for husbands and wives, while emotional intimacy did not appear to have a significant influence on sexual satisfaction. So overall, we recognize that love can make us blind. Some parts of that blindness can be positive and help a healthy relationship, but other parts can actually lead us down the wrong path. Cliche number 6. It's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Whew, this one is a big one because it applies to so many different types of loss. It could be that you love someone and they left you. It could be that you loved someone but you felt you had to outgrow or move on. It could be that you love someone and they passed away, right? Like, there's lots of different versions of how this can play out in reality. And this is another one of those that I think I have some connection to or positive sentiment towards, because I do believe that experiencing love is a great teacher in how to love and a great teacher in how not to love. There were times in my life where I felt like I was in love with someone, and whether I felt like I needed to move away from them or they were not right for me anymore, that experience of love taught me more about love. When I've had experiences with people where I felt mistreated, that still taught me more about love. And now when I'm in a relationship where we're working on things all the time and we're trying to create a healthy environment for each other, I'm still learning from that. So I do believe it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all, because every experience of love is an opportunity to learn. Every experience of love is an opportunity to grow, whether it worked out the way you expected it to or wanted it to, or whether it turned out to be an absolute nightmare. Now, whichever path it is, I think not experiencing love can be extremely challenging in forming healthy views of love. So if you think, okay, I'm going to find someone, the first person I meet, and they're going to be the person, or that I want the first person that I love to be the person I end up with, it's not that that's a bad idea or that doesn't work. Of course it does. It's just that you're going to have to do different types of work to learn about love. You're going to have to take different steps in that relationship, right? You either learn in one relationship or you learn through 7. It doesn't matter which way you take, but there's learning either way. And I think to me, it's better to learn how to love than have never learned how to love at all. Like that's how I would shift the cliche. Now let's look at the research. The phrase originated in 1850 in Alfred Lord Tennyson's poem In Memoriam. He actually wrote the poem to commemorate the life and passing of a college friend. A research study out of Michigan State University sought to determine whether those who'd loved and lost were any happier than those who'd never loved at all, or at least had stayed single their whole lives. They analyzed the relationships of 7,532 people aged 18 to 60 to see who were happier. They found that there was no significant difference in happiness levels between the groups. They said they were surprised to find that lifelong singles and those who had varied relationship histories didn't differ in how happy they were, explained Maria Perol, MSU psychology master student and co-author. This suggests that those who have loved and lost are just as happy towards the end of life than those who've never loved at all. It seems like it may be less about the marriage and more about the mindset, Perol said. If you can find happiness and fulfillment as a single person, you will likely hold on to that happiness whether there's a ring on your finger or not. I love that approach because it removes the stress and the pressure of thinking that you're incomplete without someone else. Cliche number 7, time heals all wounds. I think everyone who's ever been broken up with has heard this a million times, right? Like you break up with someone just ended a relationship with you and someone's like, time will heal everything. Or it can be something where there's a loss and someone says, well, time will heal all wounds. We've heard this again and again. And my personal take on this is kind of like the love is all you need, where time is not the only factor. And I think the challenge with time being the only factor in that statement is that we try and then figure out how much time. Like, will I be over this in a month? Can I get through this in 3 months? Maybe 12 months is too long. Oh my gosh, I've been thinking about this for 2 years. I'm the worst person because time doesn't heal, right? I've waited 2 years and it hasn't gone away. So I think the expectation that time itself is an indicator of healing is an unhealthy idea because time itself is not it. I think there's self-growth. I think there's personal development. I think there's the idea of acknowledging the wound, looking at the wound, working through the wound, trying to figure out what the best cure is of the wound. There's so much more than time that goes into this process. And so if you're going through something really difficult in relationships, if you're going through something challenging, stop trying to figure out how long it's going to take and start focusing on what actions to take, what steps to take. Now, time heals all wounds. When you look at the research, this may be more true for men than women. Research suggests that women in heterosexual relationships remember both positive and negative events in much more detail than their male partners. Women ruminate or think about their love troubles more than men, and they get more easily depressed. This is quoted material from Heartbreak by Florence Williams. Time by itself doesn't heal, especially if you're prone to ruminating. Researcher David Sbarra from the University of Arizona took people who'd been separated within the prior 5 months and had them do some expressive writing about their breakups. Researchers found that people who ruminate often on their experience reported more psychological distress 7 months later, and these individuals also had a harder time creating distance from their pain and being able to write about it coherently. He then gave the participants a writing exercise where they had to make meaning from their experience. This resulted in better psychological outcomes. The benefit of a story, as he explained, is that it helps define who you are and it gives you perspective. So perhaps the stories you tell yourself heal all wounds or keep them open. Again, that's from Heartbreak by Florence Williams. So it seems like it's not time that heals all wounds, it's the time you spend with your wound and what you do with it. For example, people who naturally move on fast, time can heal wounds. But for those of us who do spend time on it, if we're just sitting there rethinking the same thought or the same event or the same issue, that can actually cause more issues. But if we spend our time reflecting on the lesson, what we learned, and gaining meaning from that experience, then we really heal the wound we had. Number 8, one of my favorite cliches, you have to kiss a lot of toads before you find your prince. Now, first of all, disclaimer, I don't think anyone's a toad, and I also don't think anyone's a prince. I think we're just all humans, we're imperfect, we're figuring it out, we're making mistakes. But I actually agree with the idea that there may be some of us who need to go through a few challenging experiences, unhealthy experiences to find a person who's right for us. But there are also people who find them immediately or early in life. And I think this cliche makes people feel like they have to have gone through pain, that they have to go through something difficult in order to achieve something great. And I don't vibe with that, or I don't connect or resonate with that, because I do think that we all have a truly unique experience in life. I think some people literally find someone at college or in their first job and they have a beautiful relationship, and there are other people who've had poor relationship after one another and then they find someone. Some people find someone, then go on a completely different journey and then come back to that same person. So I think trying to create an ideal path or a recommended path or a should path or a suggested path is actually quite unhealthy. And I think the idea of seeing anyone as a toad or as a prince, even though you may feel that way about your ex, doesn't really help us, because there's going to be like toad-like things in the prince and there's going to be like prince-like things in the toad. And so being as black and white doesn't always help. How many different people will you have kissed before you find your prince or princess? A study commissioned by Consumer.com found that in Britain, women will have kissed 22 frogs, while men will have kissed 25 before finding the one. I think what that research shows is that we live in a world today where we are probably going to experiment more. We are going to see more people in our lifetime. We are going to date and break up. And I think what that should do is give you a sense of confidence that if you've had some unhealthy relationships, if you've had some challenging relationships, if you've just recently broken up, that there is hope, that you're still moving in the right direction. And I think the key thing that it comes back to is learn from those lessons, extract meaning from those experiences, and don't just see them as something bad that happened, but when you are comfortable and confident to unpack them, see them as an experience that has enriched your life in making you aware of what you do want and what you don't want. Thank you so much for joining me for this exclusive video of the 8 cliches of love. And I cannot wait for you to read 8 Rules of Love. If you've enjoyed this video, please share the link to pre-order my new book with every one of your friends and family so that they can access it too. I can't wait for you to form book clubs around the 8 Rules of Love. I can't wait for you to share your own videos of insights and takeaways. And again, I'm so grateful that you pre-ordered. I cannot wait for you to have it in your hands. I can't wait to be in your town or city. I hope that you'll come see me live. I'm sending you all my love. I'm sending you all my positive energy, and I'm wishing you really well. I can't wait to see you soon.